another week here. We're going to go over just one quick thing before we get into the exercise session today. For the month of December, we're going to get into basically the same exercises, except for each week is going to progress to a tougher and tougher variation of that movement. So for example, like we're going to get into a balance exercise, we're going to do different forms of squatting, single leg lunging or squatting movements, different variations of row. Each week is going to get progressively tougher. All right. The reason for that is going forward into 2021, we're just going to change up the kind of dynamic of our exercise sessions. There still will be an exercise session. It's just going to be a little bit different than what you see here. So we'll get right into our first exercise today. If you have some sort of a foam pad or a pillow that you don't mind standing on, we're going to get into our foam pad today. We're going to go with 2 feet together. So our feet should be touching, or at least as close as possible. And from there, we're going to just simply balance. All right? So you might feel your feet start to wiggle a little bit. Those ankles start to move. We're going to hold for about 30 seconds here. Halfway. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We'll get into a second set. Same thing here. Feet are going to be together. We're balancing here. And we will hold this position for 30 seconds. Remember to try and focus on something straight ahead. Try to keep your shoulders pulled back. Nice upright posture. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Next one we're going to get into is going to be our sit to stand, or our box squat that many of you have seen before. From here is what we're going to do is we're actually going to use our hands to help ourselves stand up today. So if you've got a chair with an armrest, go ahead and use that. I'm going to sit towards the front of the chair. I'm going to bring my feet back. I'm going to drive my knees out. I'll use my hands out here on the armrest to help myself stand. We'll do 10 reps together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The next one we'll get into is going to come from the floor. Again, if you've been following our exercise sessions, you've seen this one before. We're going to get into our glute bridge. Alright, so key here with the glute bridge, we want our core to stay braced the entire time. Because what we don't want to do is lift our hips up with this overarched spine, okay? So our knees are going to be bent. We're going to actively press our core down into the floor. From here, we're going to keep our knees out as we not only lift our hips off the ground, but we're going to keep this core engaged. All right, so you're going to feel that back on the ground right now. We'll slowly lift the hips. We're going to come up. You'll feel the tension in the glutes, and then you're going to come back down, and your lower back should be in contact with the ground again. If it's not, and you've lost that tension, you're not going to feel your lower back pressing into the floor. Okay? We'll go ahead and do 12 reps here. Lower back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For our next one, I've got a chair and a foam pad or a pillow set up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves set up so that our feet are into a split stance, and I'm kind of straddling this here foam pad. The one thing that we don't want to do, we want to avoid what we call the tightrope syndrome. So that would be basically stacking our feet one on top of each other, and when I start to go down, I get really wobbly because my feet are lined up one after the other. So what you really want to do is you want to set yourself up. You can have one foot out in front. Take your back foot out just a little bit so that you can create a bit of a wider base. All right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have the chair on my left-hand side, which means I'm going to have my right foot out in front. All right? From here, I'm going to try and drop my hips down, bringing this back knee down towards the pad. We're going to go ahead and do 10 reps together. So we'll get set and we will start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We're going to turn around. We'll put our left leg out in front now, which means now my right hand is on the chair. I'll bring this pad back just a little, and it'll be the same thing. You may notice a bit of a difference, one side versus the other. That's where we split things up into single leg movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Next one we're going to get into is probably the most important movement that you can do for your upper body. We're going to get into a row. So our row here is going to be standing. I'm going to use a band. I've got it in the doorway here. The one thing that we want to keep in mind is, again, this bracing of the core. So what I'm going to do when I row is I'm going to get myself into a nice athletic position. So I'm going to brace my knees just a little bit. And I'm going to keep my core pulled in nice and tight. So my rib cage is pulled down. Is what we don't want is we don't want our arms out in front and then this overarching to help us think that we're accomplishing this row in a better way or getting more range of motion. All right? We're going to lock the core down and then drive the elbows back just so that they're about even with the body. There's no need for me to pull all the way back here because that's just going to open you up to this poor position. All right, we'll go ahead and come over to the band. We'll do 15 reps here. So as I said, a nice athletic position. Our shoulders will be pulled down. I'm going to drive my elbows back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So since that movement is so important for our upper body, we are going to get into another set. Again, just one thing that you want to keep in mind is brace knees, brace core, arms are directly out in front, shoulders are down, and we're pulling back to this position right here. Out in front and back. We'll do another set of 15. More. We'll be seated for our next exercise here. I'm going to use a dumbbell. If you don't have access to a dumbbell, you can use a can or a water bottle, anything along those lines, something that's about 5 pounds. But even if you don't have a dumbbell, you don't necessarily have to use one, especially if you're someone who's been living with some shoulder pain. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a single arm press. We're going to do 1 set each side, 10 reps on each arm. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're up nice and tall. But I don't want this overarch position again. I want to keep my core braced. I'm going to bring my dumbbell towards my shoulder. My elbow is going to be tucked. I'm not going to let it flare out to the side. Elbow is tucked, and I'm going to try and press straight up and overhead. Now, if you feel pain at this point right here, do not try and finish that movement up and overhead. That would be your end range of motion, okay? Especially if you can only get to right here without any weight in your hand. So if you're getting to here without weight in your hand, this is your end range of motion. Now, if you have weight in your hand and you can get to here, but then it starts to become painful, try and drop that weight and try and just go overhead without any weight. If you can go all the way overhead without any weight, then that would be your starting position, okay? We always want to prioritize quality of movement and range of motion over the weight lifted itself. All right, we'll get into one side here, core is braced. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll go ahead and switch sides. Again, make sure the core is braced, elbow tucked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to get into another exercise here for our posture and our posterior chain, so the back side. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our band in the doorway. We're going to get into what's called anatomical position. So that means our palms are going to face forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have those handles right in my hands here. And I'm going to try and drive my hands back so that I pinch my shoulder blades. Alright, one thing that we don't want to see, of course, is this overarching to accomplish that goal. The other thing that we want to avoid is an elevation of the shoulders. So what we don't want is for you to drive those hands back while shrugging the shoulders or raising the shoulders. So you're going to keep your core braced. You're going to have your palms out in front with those handles in the hands. You're going to drive your hands back towards your pockets by squeezing at your shoulder blades. Okay? For our range of motion on this one, there's no need for us to drive all the way back here and get into this mass range of motion for our shoulder. Even if you can do it, again, no need for us to do it in this case. I want you to bring those arms so that they're even with your body. We'll do one set here, 15 repetitions. Arms slightly out in front, palms facing forward, and I'll pinch back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last but not least, today we're going to get into a form of our deadlift. We're not going to use any weight today. We're just going to kind of focus on what we're really looking for when we do this form of a deadlift. So this one's going to be called our Romanian deadlift. So the key difference between a typical deadlift and a Romanian today, we're going to keep our legs a little bit straighter. All right, so we're not necessarily going to drop the hips down towards the floor. We're going to focus on the hinge pattern at my hip. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to place our hands on our legs. Our feet are going to be underneath our hips. You're going to have a small bend in your knees. And then you're going to slide your hands down your legs by pushing your hips straight back. All right, so what I want you to think about is taking your hips straight back through a doorway. All right, so slight bend, pushing the hips back. Notice how my back stays nice and flat. My head is not cocked forward nor cocked down. It's in a neutral position with my spine. When I get to my end range here, again, back is flat and I feel a big pull in my hamstrings. I'm going to push my hips forward to stand nice and tall. The one thing that we see oftentimes with this one is the need to pull the shoulders and letting the shoulders lead. So when we let our shoulders lead with this movement, this is what we get into. All right? So when we get into this position here, obviously my back is rounded. I'm into a compromised position. If If I have any sort of weight in my hands, I'm going to cause pain or damage to my spine, to those vertebrae, to the discs that lie between them. So we want to make sure that our back stays nice and flat. Now, some people may have different range of motion with this exercise. So for example, slight bend in the knees, I can get down to about here with a nice flat back. If I go any further, I lose that tension. All right, so I'm going to go to my end range of motion. Yours might be a little bit different. It might be simply to right here. All right, we'll do one set here. We're going to do 12 repetitions. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so our deadlift in any form is one of the most important that we're going to do. If we think about all the things that we pick up off of the ground or just from a lower surface on an everyday basis, we do it quite often, so we're going to practice that movement yet again, strengthen those muscles. So again, slight bend in the knees. We're going to slide our hands down the legs as we push our hips back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,